You're listening to the Topco Business Unusual podcast. Now, the Business Unusual podcast. Learn from the greatest minds in business today. Interviews hosted by Ralph Fletcher. Learn how to improve business, get tips from industry leaders, and be motivated by real-life experience. Topco Business Unusual.
Welcome to this week's Business Unusual podcast. Today I'm joined by award-winning dealmaker and the new MD for Virgin Group South Africa, Jessica Spira. Welcome, Jessica.
Hi, Ralph. Thanks for having me on this podcast. It's a real honor to be here.
Yeah, and congratulations on your new role. You're sort of, 10 months in, 8 months in? We weren't quite...
No, just over 6 months.
6 months.
Just
and you're
over
new to Cape Town. And you're new to Cape Town. Cape Town's a new place.
Yes, everything's new. New job, new location. But it's all going great. It's really been a fantastic move so far. Fantastic. Settling in the family has been a bit of a challenge, but we will get there.
They say moving schools and moving jobs is like a big event. So you've had a couple of these things: moving jobs, moving cities, moving schools, moving families. So yeah, these are big challenges, right? So I'm sure you're going to guide us through that.
Sure.
So I mean, Jessica, we obviously know from your award-winning attributes, Dealmaker of the Year in 2018 at RMB, you've got a track record of really putting together some complex deals. And I mean, a bit of a powerhouse in the financial services sector, if I'm honest. But I mean, where did this come from? I know that, it's unusual that someone stays with an organization for 20 years. I mean, you've really done your time, you've been committed to the organization, and now you had this big change. But sort of what brought around these deal-making attributes? What was it? The parents, sort of, what do you think it was?
So I'll tell you a little bit about myself. I come from Johannesburg, born and bred. I'm from a family of 4 kids, the youngest of 4. We all pretty much high overachievers, my siblings and I. And my parents are still alive and well, thank goodness. They, by profession, were a maths teacher. My mom was a maths teacher. My dad was a journalist. How they actually managed to put 4 of us through school and raise 4 kids on those salaries, I'm not entirely sure, but fortunately government schooling in the 80s was a little bit more affordable than it is public schooling or private schooling now. But really close knit family, loving family, really had a happy childhood. Decided at the end of, kind of convinced my entire life I was going to be a doctor, enrolled for medicine, bought the textbooks, the whole story. And then at the last minute, changed direction entirely. And I did a BCom accounts at Wits. I did an honours in taxation, also got an HDIP tax, also from Wits. So studied in Joburg. And that led me to do accounting articles, which I did at Arthur Andersen in Johannesburg, which is a fantastic experience, and then decided it was a good opportunity to take a gap year. So I went to London and I worked a little bit at a couple of investment banks over there. And when I came back, after traveling quite a lot, and in fact, I would say that the travel for a year backpacking around Europe was probably one of the best educational experiences I could have had. So once that was out of my system, I came back and decided that I wanted to get into banking. Did a lot of research in terms of the landscape of the banking environment. I was particularly keen in structured finance, given my tax background. And I interviewed at RMB and a number of other banks, but RMB was my first choice. And luckily I got a role there, and I joined in 2001. So that was the start of my R&B career, 21 years there. It was a long time.
Sure, it is a long time. And what's fascinating is you talk around, and I've heard this quite a few times, is this moment where you've got your heart fixed on, or your mind fixed on something to study, to be a doctor, and then you've shifted, and that almost, I see it as a strength, is that ability to move with a change. What was the thing that compelled you to move into taxation versus being the doctor?
I think it was just I had a cousin who was doing her last year of medical school, and she caught wind of the fact that I was about to enroll for medicine, and she convinced me that it was not a good career and I should really think again about it. And it was just by chance that I just said to my parents at the time, I didn't know what I should do if I'm not going to be doing medicine. And they said, well, why don't you just get a BCom degree? It can always help you in whatever you do, which is good advice actually at the time.
Yeah.
I was a pretty much all-rounder. So I was, okay, I'll give it a try. And that's really where my path led me. It sort of just happened to me in a way.
Wow.
But it was a obviously a much younger self at the time. So the ramifications of my decision at the time was probably not fully understood. Yet I suppose now as a thinking adult, when you make decisions like that, it's a far more considered decision that one has to actually look at the situation and decide what the right thing to do is. But I was at R&B for 21 years, but I did so many different things. It wasn't a linear progression while I was at R&B. It was started in credit, was there for a year doing credit analysis, and then I moved into structured finance deal making. So most of the career, in fact, 20 of the years, I was in the front office deal making part of the business. And I did varied things throughout my career at R&B. I started off in asset-based finance, which led to me heading up the aircraft finance team, which is kind of some completely different from where we are today. And then some leverage finance deals as well, involved in some of the great leverage finance deals that happened sort of 2007 before the financial crisis, those eye-wateringly high leverage transactions that happened then, such as the Prime Media deal was the one that I worked on. And then I moved into more of a relationship role where I was appointed as a business development director in about, I think it was 2007. And that was really where I broadened my reach in terms of the types of companies that I covered. So as a business development director, one was responsible for managing the relationship with some of our large strategic clients. So I had a portfolio of clients across a number of sectors where I was responsible to be the sort of go-to person at the bank for all of their banking needs, whether it was debt or equity capital raises or whatever it was. So I was involved in a number of great transactions while in that role. As I said, across sectors. So I was covering the likes of a Remgro, Discovery, Bidvest at the time. I was also looking at, so really quite cross purposes, never really got involved in resources. So that's a bit of a blank spot in my wheelhouse. But I was really privileged actually to have the opportunity to work on some really amazing transactions. I worked on, the largest transaction I worked on was the reverse listing of Mediclinic into Alnor onto the LSE, which is really a huge transaction that spanned multiple jurisdictions, and a very exciting transaction to work on, and great team at Mediclinic to work with as well. Other transactions, and we did a number of transactions for Discovery, which was a very important client for the bank, but also for me. It was my responsibility to do everything Discovery, and that's actually a relationship that extends into the Virgin Active world as well, which is really amazing. Really enjoy working with the Discovery team, and luckily I still get to work with them in this new role, which is good. But also worked in other sectors such as the TMT sector. We worked closely for many years with CIVH. We advised them on the acquisition of Vumatel, which was quite a significant transaction in that space. So really a number of sectors that I worked on, but also a number of types of transactions, whether it was debt or equity, advisory. It was really a very varied career, and that's why when people say, how did you stay at R&B for so long? I did so many different things every day. So it wasn't like I ever got bored, my day-to-day activities. And every day was pretty exciting. And most importantly, just loved working with the people at R&B, and it was a great environment to work in as well.
And you obviously touch paths with some award-winning billionaires of South Africa as well. So is there any lessons you learned when working with these guys, these I suppose titans
I'll actually share a funny story with you. So I've just been recently appointed into this business development director role. I was fairly young actually to be in that sort of position, because it was just fairly senior type of role that you had to deal with the C-suite of executives as their point person for the bank. So Mike Pfaff was the CEO at the time at R&B, and so he was spearheading the project for us to become much more of a relationship-driven bank. Previously, we'd been more product-driven, and we were moving more to a relational side of the business, which is, I think, where most banks are sitting at the moment in any event. So we had a portfolio of clients that I was actually taking over from a guy who was leaving the bank, and so I was inheriting his portfolio. But one of the clients that I needed to take over the relationship of was Discovery. So Mike and I went off to the Discovery head office, and we met with Adrian Gore. And Mike said, Adrian, this is your new relationship person. And Adrian was very nice to me, and he said, hello, welcome, Jessica, nice to meet you, blah, blah, blah. And Mike, can I just have a word with you after this meeting? And so then I left the room, and they had a little private discussion, and Mike shared with me afterwards that Adrian said to him, well, who is this young girl that you're putting onto my account? Like, why are you actually
am I not important?
Her? Am I not important enough? Anyway, and I have to give massive credit to Mike, because at the time, he was so super supportive, and he said, don't worry, you're in great hands, which of course he was. But Adrian knew better at the time, and our relationship really developed extensively into a really amazing partnership through the years, and still continues, which is amazing. So it was. So I think dealing with the C-suite executives was definitely quite daunting, especially when I was quite young going into that type of role. But my approach to those sorts of things is, they're just individuals, really. At the end of the day, they're just people, and there's no need to be intimidated. Everyone has their thing.
When did Mike tell you? Did he tell you after the meeting what Adrian said, or did he tell you later?
Yeah, he did. No, he told me straight after.
But it's not the first time you've had people doubting you.
No,
because I know in the MediClinic deal, when you came up with the structured finance, the UK set of attorneys weren't too optimistic of some of the ways that you're going to structure the deal.
That's actually true. Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, we had to really fight hard with the UK attorneys, with the SARB, with a whole bunch of regulatory bodies to get the transaction over the line. It was quite a revolutionary transaction in terms of the way it was structured, but we got through, and it was a great success.
And so,
in terms of
and so for women in business, like in South Africa and in the financial sector, or in any sector, what sort of lessons did you learn for overcoming those sort of challenges, where people are you're coming up with something innovative, you've got a solution approach, you're young, you're innovative, and you're getting sort of questioned a little bit in terms of not your ability, but is this going to work? It hasn't worked before.
So, I think if I look back to those days, and it's definitely changed somewhat. I mean, women are far more out there in the workplace and in business. But at the time, it was a boys' club, or in some respects, there are many pockets of boys' clubs around the business world. And so, I was always wondering, well, I don't play golf, I don't drink beer. How am I going to actually relate to these people? But I do think, though, if you lead with knowledge and insight, and you can actually prove yourself in terms of actually delivery, that's going to win you the trust that you need. And it is all about trust, especially with these very large strategic relationships that you hold with corporate clients. It's important that you show your worth. And look, I mean, it was we at R&B, we had an amazing team of like super clever and capable individuals. So it was always a team working on these things ultimately anyway.
Yeah. And so I suppose, you know, the role of business development and sort of your role now is a little bit different, but I look at the business development side of things, and essentially it's relationships, it's sales, it's influence, it's getting people to see things in a different way or to buy into different things. And I'm always intrigued with people in that business development approach, because with the cold face, you've got to bring people together and create a win-win environment where people maybe won't be seeing it. What did you learn from that? And you know, I see almost sales as a bit of a dirty word in South Africa. It's weird, but it feels like a dirty word. And as opposed to, if I look at America, if I look at the UK, like they believe that, you know, building relationships, selling is part of how you grow. You know, you got to have like a sales mentality. You got to see the value. You got to be able to share the value. And so I'm always intrigued how, even in a banking environment, how hard that is, or sort of what are the lessons you learned in and creating that sort of growth mindset to your clients and within the bank.
So absolutely. I mean, I think anyone in front office deal making in banking is in sales. I mean, ultimately, there's stiff competition across the banking sector. So to go out there and win a transaction, or you know, be appointed on a transaction, you need to have what it takes to make the sale happen. So it depends what you're selling. So when it's debt, you know, sometimes it's not that easy if it's a vanilla transaction and you really only have to compete on price. But I think what we try to do at R&B is to really sell on the extra value from, let's say, clever structuring or other types of solutions that could really benefit the business beyond just the transaction. So we had a tagline at R&B, which was all about solutionist thinking, and we really traded on the fact that we were, you know, thought leaders, and that's where the thinking part comes in. And solutionist meaning that, you know, we don't just sort of spew out the same product over and over again, but we actually think about the solutions that's right for the business. And that's, I think, often what set us apart from some of our competitors. So from a sales perspective, it's interesting that you bring up sales, because the one thing that I've found as a very steep contrast between Virgin Active being involved here as opposed to where I was before is the fact that the R&B business is a B2B business. Although you still have relationships and you're dealing one-on-one, you know, with whoever you're dealing with at the corporate, Virgin Active is a retail business, and to make sales into a retail market is a very different skill and a very different strategy to doing a B2B business. And I think that's been one of the biggest adjustments I had to make from a sales perspective. And obviously sales is really what we're doing. I mean, you're selling a product, and as we were doing at R&B, but it's a different process altogether.
Yeah, no, I mean, I was going to ask you what are the biggest challenges, because I'd imagine there'll be a couple. And I knew that, I mean, I think that, Virgin Active is a sales business because you're selling an opportunity in a lifestyle. You're selling something that's should be really important to people. I think we said you look really healthy, and so that health to me is really, really important. And so, and I think it's about selling it not just in December, but how do you sell it all year round? Because I think it's easy to sell.
No, January. January's our biggest sales month by far. All those New Year's resolutions, you know, people come back from their holidays. This year I'm going to join the gym. This year I'm going to get fit and healthy. January is always a big sales month for all of us. And then it tapers off, and there's sort of ebbs and flows. People sort of stick to the couch in winter, so we try and get people into the gyms. But there's a definite shift in the way that the health industry is moving in terms of health and fitness. And the way that we're positioning ourselves at Virgin Active is far more a shift into the wellness space. We really want to become a wellness solution, and in fact, social wellness. And that's a really important part. I think if you look at how, everyone came out of the pandemic and far more focused on their personal health. We see the whole health ecosystem is something that we can solve for. And so, people have come back to the gyms post-COVID, which is amazing. And they're coming back to the gyms, obviously, to keep healthy, but they're also coming back to the gyms for the sense of community and belonging that they get from actually coming to a club where they can meet up with friends or like-minded individuals, be in a sociable place, hear great music, do an exercise class, and that was really missing during COVID. And I think people truly missed it. And I think that's why they're coming back to the gyms at the moment, which is great to see.
I read that and I was like, oh my, I didn't realize how important that community is. It's not just the exercise, it's actually you're creating a community of people who want to meet with other like-minded people. And I read recently, I interviewed a lady yesterday, and she was telling me she moved to Cape Town. She joined a book club, but she also joined a running club, and how important these environments are for social interactions. And I think you did a little article, and you talked around how exercise improves, your happiness, and it reduces your stress. But also then going to a gym is going to accelerate that even more, because you've got those, it's almost like the coffee station at work, where you mingle and you can engage with people.
So what we'd really like our clubs to be, in terms of fulfilling people's needs, is that, Starbucks talks of a third space as an example. So you have, the idea of Starbucks and their strategy was all around saying you have work, you have home, and you have your third space. What we'd love to be is actually the second space, especially with hybrid work. So where people are working at home or working from coffee shops, what our clubs can offer is actually your sort of almost your second space. This is where you can work. This is where you can do your exercise, where you can have your coffee, where you can have your meetings, and it becomes a very great value proposition for those people who want to have that space to go to. And that's why, in terms of the way that we're adjusting our clubs, we're looking at increasing our food and beverage offering, which I'll talk to in a minute in terms of the real foods acquisition, but also from a design perspective, including a lot more dwell space. So creating more comfortable seating, places for people to work, take calls, and we're really focusing on trying to make our F&B space a lot more inviting and comfortable. And that then, I guess, leads me on to the discussion about real foods. So last year, Virgin Active bought Real Foods, which is the owner of the Kauai and New brands. And a lot of people, I think, thought that Kauai and New were already part of Virgin because they saw them in all the clubs in any event, and they weren't. They were just a tenant in our space. But now we incorporate them into our business. Obviously, Kauai and New has a retail offering as well. So it's not just the club Kauai and News that's in the group, but from a impact on the gym perspective, having that F&B offering within the gym allows us to really almost enhance the whole value proposition for the member in terms of providing nutrition alongside fitness, and then alongside the dwell space as well.
Yeah.
So I think sorry, carry on.
I went to the silo. I made the mistake of going to the silo, shall I say? You should not go to the silo. You shouldn't go to the silo. That's all I'll tell everybody. Don't go to the silo, because that's all you want afterwards. It's like,
exactly.
It's terrible. It's a terrible place to go. I advise no one to go there.
No, it's awesome. I mean, I think if we could replicate the silo on different levels at all of our clubs, I mean, that's really what we want to get to. We want to get to a place where, irrespective of affordability or offering, that we can actually provide that sort of space to all of our members, so that they can just feel like it's their home. It feels like their place to go to, almost like that country club vibe where, that's the one club you need to belong to.
It looks like they've got shares in there, to be honest. A lot of the guys look like they got and women look like they got shares in.
They just stay there the whole day.
They stay there the whole day, and they look like they're having a great time. It's not fair. And we've got to go to the office, and then You talk around a retail business. How important is the corporates? Because obviously for us as an organization, keeping our people healthy, we know the stats, we know how important it is, but it is a challenge. How relevant is that? How do you help get more organizations getting their people to the gyms? Is that something that's on your radar?
Absolutely. I mean, we have a strategy to around our corporate wellness solution, which is absolutely driven by what you said. I mean, the stats have shown that being healthy makes you more productive, reduces absenteeism, improves profitability as a result, concentration, makes people happier, also creates that sense of community within the office environment of people who work together and train together. You know, as they say about relationships, if you those who sweat together stay together. So you know, same could apply. The same could apply for employees that work together as well. And so we are working extensively on our corporate wellness solutions. And we already do quite a lot of stuff. I mean, we do things like corporate activations where we go to offices and help them run a wellness day or exercise day. But we are working on a specific initiative where we're going to look at helping corporates with the employee value proposition, specifically around health and wellness. But I think it's also luckily also spurred on and buoyed by our relationship with Vitality. So we have a very long-standing relationship with Vitality, and they also have a lot of corporate businesses, and often, you know, you'll have your Discovery Medical Aid through work. So there's also a lot of corporate engagement through the Vitality model as well.
For sure. I mean, I just think back to the pandemic, COVID, it was 3 years ago. I was really active. I went from being really active. I actually got sick just beforehand. I did World Champs and I got shingles at an event. I didn't even know I had it. And so it was a big moment there as well where I realized I was possibly overdoing the exercise thing and possibly not looking after myself enough. And so, but I look at that and I looked at your business, and you were, if someone could be affected by COVID, you would probably be one of the most affected businesses. And then you're sitting in a financing institution. You're looking how you can help and refinance the business. And then you're seeing the upside. What did you see?
So sorry, Ralph, are you asking me about what I did during COVID at R&B?
No.
Or what are we doing at Virgin Active?
Like, what did you, when you were looking at helping Virgin Active, when you're sitting at R&B, they're at a low point. It's not like the business was under a lot of pressure at the time because of how much it was affected. And I can't help but I'm so impressed how the business has come out of that situation. In many other organizations folded, gave up, gave in, and there's Virgin who's looking like they've come out stronger. They're making acquisitions. They've been able to attract yourself and get the founder of Real Foods back into the organization, you know. And so in a way, you're seeing something into the future. You're seeing 3 to 5 years now, something that I'm not seeing or other people aren't seeing. What did you see when you looked at this business, when you saw what it was doing? What is it you saw? I think
it's important to know. So when I was at R&B, I never actually banked Virgin. I was never involved with Virgin Active while I was at R&B. They weren't my client, which is interesting. It was a bank client, but it was actually managed by the Cape Town office. So, and I wasn't involved in actually managing that relationship. So it was a new relationship for me when I met Dean at the beginning of last year when I was approached on the role. That said, I do happen to know a little bit about what happened with the banking of Virgin Active at the time. And so 2 things. So I think from a bank's perspective, what we did generally across all of our, when I say we, what R&B did across all of the corporate clients that we had at the time is we were actually particularly helpful. Actually, I think we were amazing. We came up with solutions to help our corporate clients get through the pandemic. No one actually knew in March 2020 how long it would last, of course, So it was more, we created a lot of leeway in terms of debt repayments and covenant moratoriums and things like that. So it was really great from a relationship building perspective to support our corporate clients through a very hard time. And the same happened with Virgin Active in terms of the debt that the banks provided to Virgin Active and still continue to do. We have very strong banking relationships, and we do have a fair chunk of debt in the business, and the banks have been particularly understanding in terms of the various challenges that the business has faced. From a Virgin Active perspective, what happened during COVID was that, which I also think was very well received by the entire membership base. I mean, the memberships were frozen. No one had to pay the memberships, which didn't happen uniformly across the sector. You know, people, we wanted to rather freeze memberships so that people would come back after frozen rather than cancel. So that was a strategy there. Obviously, to the extent that we opened again, there were strict regulations around how many people were allowed in each of the clubs and different various levels of lockdown, but big focus on cleaning and hygiene. So that was another thing that we did. So it was definitely a very, very difficult time. Obviously wasn't in the business at the time, but I can imagine extremely stressful for employees who were in the business, not knowing what was going to happen. No one was laid off in terms of that process within Virgin Active, but there was obviously massive crisis management on a day-to-day basis. My CFO was hired just before COVID, so he timed it really perfectly. So he had to go through all of that.
Yeah, and I think the thing that's impressing me is the how many corporates actually came through that process. And maybe 2008 was a big lesson, because it certainly was for us as well. It was difficult for many people, and it seems like some really good leadership decisions were made through that process, where jobs were secured, where customers were looked after. And I think that in the end, these are great leadership lessons for the future generations to come, is that you know, different businesses go through different cycles. I mean, for me, that's one of the leadership lessons I certainly learned from this, was to look after your people and they'll look after your customers. But you in a way had to do both very much.
Yeah, for sure. And I do think that it was one of the laggards in terms of recovery as well. Probably one of the fitness sector was probably one of the worst hit and one of the last to start recovering. And we still haven't, fully recovered, unfortunately. I mean, that's definitely number one priority for me, is to at least get us back to our pre-COVID levels in terms of membership numbers, which we're not there yet. So we're still hoping people are still going to return to the gyms that were previously members as a start. But there's lots of reasons for them to do that now, I think, in terms of focus on health and wellness, the value offering that we have at Virgin Active, and hopefully, we'll get the members back. Big groundswell actually coming from the youth, which is actually exciting to see. We're seeing a lot more of the teenagers in the clubs. It's become again back to the social element of going to the gym. Lots of teenagers working out. We love our youth, and we want them to come, and they're our future generation of members. So exciting to be able to offer different things to them. It's also a big change in focus, interestingly, post-pandemic, in terms of the way people exercise. So a lot of focus on things like strength training as opposed to cardio, shift away a little bit from cardio into strength. So a lot of the changes that we're effecting now, I alluded to some of them earlier, definitely increasing our dwell space in terms of, staying longer at the gym, using the F&B offering a little bit more, people moving to strength training, and then also, I think, trying to create a personalized journey for our members is something that's become, I think, of the moment, not necessarily a post-COVID thing, but definitely in terms of trends in how the wellness and fitness industry is moving. And I think any consumer sector at the moment is focusing on how personalized member journeys or consumer journeys can be crafted. So there's a big focus for us on that as well. And I think what I should probably, it's a bit preemptive, but I'll share with you. So we actually hopefully in the next month or so launching a new app, which is very exciting. And that will also include a loyalty piece in it. So we're looking to really create a lot of motivation for people to come back to the gyms. They'll be incentivized to come back and get their rewards if they attend gym. Really would like to encourage all of our members and to engage more with the product, to come to gym more often, and obviously those who aren't yet members to join or rejoin if they previously left.
So that technology push is important.
Yes, exactly. So that's really where I was going to. So on the personalized journey piece, with the new app and collecting a lot of new data in terms of the member specifically and understanding what members want and use and engage with in terms of our product, will guide us as to how to design our business accordingly. People want a personalized journey in terms of their fitness and wellness, but also having that data in our ecosystem helps us make really valuable business decisions. So I'm a massive believer in the power of data and how it can actually transform a business. And you think about a bricks and mortar business such as Virgin Active, and you say, well, how can Virgin Active be a digital business? And it's really a massive opportunity for us is actually to create that digital journey for our members, enhance their experience, help us with our own business decisions in terms of amending and enhancing our product accordingly, and really also help our partners that we work with as well, because they also love to use the data that we have in terms of how many people visit the clubs. Creates a lot of value for our retail partners or our corporate partners. So it's a really valuable data set to have. We have just over 600,000 members across Southern Africa, and it's a good base of individuals to have data on. So we're not obviously going to be using individual data, and it all becomes quite anonymized, but it is a very good indicator of trends and what people are using and how people are behaving in certain areas around the gyms.
And one can't help but think of other opportunities that come with that, financial products or others, because obviously those people generally, if you're exercising and you're looking after yourself, you're going to be probably the sort of person that everybody wants to work with as well. How hard is it for other organizations to tap in and partner and work with you? So we deal with 2,400 of South Africa's top companies. And there's lots of tech companies and innovative companies, and I can't help but think there must be so many people who have opportunities how to help you, work with you, partner you. How would they do that? How open are you to partnerships, to exploring these things, and how difficult is it to sort of make those things happen?
I get calls every day with people reaching out to me, which I absolutely appreciate. I think it's amazing that people feel that they're able to approach me and reach me, which is great. Sometimes it's a no-go, which I can really let them know off the bat. But I generally try and consider everyone who approaches me as critically as possible. There are absolutely partners that we work with. We don't want to dilute the value of our partnerships for any partners that we have, but we have a number of partners that we work with quite closely, whether it's product partners, let's say in apparel, or various partners that might be within our brand wheelhouse and our brand requirements, on trend with fitness and wellness. We try and keep it very specific in terms of who we choose to partner with.
Yeah, and those relationships, I mean, I'd imagine that's where this comes in now, these relationships of people who supported you. It's really about how you leverage those now in the future. Is that some of the thinking?
Yeah, I think so. I think I'm fortunate, having had the experience I did for so many years across so many different sectors and industries, that I've got a fantastic network across corporate South Africa, which is helping me in a lot of ways as well.
What's your secret? I was going to ask you, what's your 5 relationship principles that sort of help you build great relationships? Because it's clear when you're taking not millions, but billions, and you're doing cross-border transactions, there's a lot of trust there that you've built up and a lot of credibility. And so I think there's a lot that people can learn from how you've done
that. Okay, so I don't have them off the bat, so let me think. Let me think of how I can. I'll try to put my nuggets of wisdom into this, Ralph, as best as I can. I think integrity is critical. It's the core of everything. You have to act always honestly. Admit when you've made a mistake, fix the problems, finding solutions. Really thinking about the other person, whether it's a person or a corporate. Really saying, okay, well, what are you trying to solve for? What am I trying to solve for? Really thinking about the problem from both sides of the coin, I think, is really critical.
Yeah. Is there enough of that happening, do you think? Is there enough of that win-win mentality or?
Look, I think typically people are inherently selfish.
Yeah.
So, it's hard to actually instill that. But I do believe that, and having seen it through closing a number of corporate transactions, when people feel that if they're buying a service, which they often were at RMB, and they feel that they're getting value and they're getting the right solution, that's actually, really put their needs at first, people are happy, and people are generally okay to pay a fee for a good service or good advice.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, win-win is really important. I think other things I really like to live by is really just, and I guess this is very much also driven on my relationship-driven approach is, I always say to my kids, work hard, be nice. That's it. Like that's all you're gonna do, right? You're gonna work hard and be nice, and like you're gonna be nice doing it. There's no point in being aggressive or obtuse or anything when you're dealing with people, no matter who it is, whether it's someone in an organization or a partner or a customer or a supplier. Get things done if you have that approach. It's pretty simple. It's something I like to live by.
Yeah, I saw some of the reactions to your change of role, and it's almost like you can, before I met you, you can feel that you wonder what's driving the success, and you definitely, there's an endearingness towards you from that be nice, and it's something that my wife says all the time as well. She just says, be nice to people, just be nice. And so I think it's almost the opposite of having empathy. It's being proactive. And no one wants to work for an arsehole. So it's we want to work with nice people, right? We want to get stuff done. And so when you've got a choice, that's the situation. The trust thing, because for me, the trust thing is quite a hard thing to explain to people. And often for me, it's how you demonstrate trust, or how do you show trust to other people. And often it's like a mistake I've made, or I'll walk away from a situation if I don't think it's good for the business.
Yeah, look, I think trust is absolutely something that needs to be earned, and I think that's possibly one of the personal challenges I had in terms of starting something completely new. The benefit and the comfort of staying in a job or in a company such as RMB for so many years is that I earned my trust early on in my career, and it's sort of just stuck with you. I mean, obviously, unless you break it, and that was across clients and internally as well. And then coming into a completely new environment where literally no one knew me, earning trust is not an easy thing to do, and it's not that I think people keep their reserve their judgment for some time until you've proven yourself. So it is something I'm working on, and hopefully, at least from my exco perspective, I think we're getting a good working relationship going now. And for me, I think in terms of getting trust from your immediate team, it requires empathy and understanding. I mean, empathy is really an important part of leadership these days. I would say it's one of the greatest characteristics of a good leader at the moment. There's been it wasn't always there. It really wasn't. It was often many times in many corporates I've seen, where leaders were purely draconian and purely dictatorial, and that was never created a great culture. So I do think that culture comes from the top, and empathy is a really important quality to have in a leadership team.
And if I think back to some of the things you did at RMB, creating the Women Leadership Program, and I think about trust, and I think it's often not what you see is what builds trust as well. It's about how you help others. And some of the work that you did in the COVID relief program, and you talk about empathy, and it's like women are endowed with a natural ability to be far more empathetic than men. For me, it's like men generally have to work quite hard to be empathetic, where women have that natural ability. I mean, what are some of the things that you saw in building the women program within RMB in terms of building women leadership? What are some of the initiatives that you were able to see?
So that was actually something I was particularly proud of, actually, in terms of my achievements over the years. So in 2015, there were 7 female executives from RMB who got together, I being one of them. And we decided, and at the time, women leadership initiatives, which seem to be all over the place now, were non-existent, especially in South Africa. And we decided we really needed to change the face of the leadership structure at RMB. It always had been traditionally white male, and it's very, very difficult to break that cycle. And we felt if it was going to be driven by an HR team, it probably wouldn't have got the support that it required. So we developed sort of almost behind closed doors and totally off our own bat, and no one asked us to do this. We just decided it needed to be done. And we developed a sort of framework as to what had to change at RMB in order for a change in the leadership, or the face of the leadership, to be effective. And it was a great experience. It was very much looking at international best practice, deciding what we needed to do internally. The men of the business were at the core of our solution. So we actually, put them, men matter as one of our most important pillars of the Athena program. And then the amazing thing to see was that, it's now developed a whole life of itself. And that's really, the number of initiatives that live under the Athena brand at RMB to promote and develop women so they can become better leaders. And really, I think if you look at the makeup of the exco at the moment, with Emery Brown as the CEO of RMB now, I think it's significantly changed. So 2015, that's only 8 years ago, but it feels like a lifetime ago. But we really created something amazing and created real change, which has been effected in a relatively short space of time.
No, congratulations. I'm interested when you say we didn't just rely on HR.
Well, we felt that it needed to be really driven at a exco level at RMB, the change. And we felt if it was just an HR initiative, it would just be this is a tick box exercise. We need to get it done because it's required by the Department of Labor. And so, this is what HR is telling us to do, but we don't really believe in it. So because the 7 of us who dreamed this up, we're all front office deal makers, we were able to actually, get the attention of the RMB exco at the time. And I think that made a big difference in terms of actually getting it off the ground. And it was also great because we were one of the first banks to do it. And we created a Women in Financial Services forum as well, so that a lot of the other banks followed quite shortly afterwards. I'm not saying that they necessarily did because we did it, but we were definitely one of the first in the market in terms of actually making sure that we had a program around developing women leaders in the organization.
I think the reason I want to stay with this a little bit is because I think that people have good ideas. And sometimes people don't take accountability. And so taking accountability is one thing. And having a good idea is great. But, you know, as I grew up knowing, there's millions of great ideas out there. You got to make them work. And so having these deal makers, how did you, I'm going to be a bit blunt here, but how did you sell it to the exco is because people, there's changes, you know, we hopefully are going to have positive change and progress throughout humanity. So this is not just a one moment in time. We are hopefully going to be looking at improvements all the way through. And so how did you find this program that you developed and influenced these exco and sold it to them?
It wasn't easy. You know, I think we needed to really demonstrate why it mattered, and the fact that it was a business imperative for us to do it, not just because it was a nice to have, and not because, you know, because there was a tick box exercise. And it wasn't about that. It was really about saying, you know, we need to change how R&B looks into the future. We need to be forward thinking, future thinking. And I think that we needed to, so there were a couple of things. So we needed to present factually that actually companies who have more diversity on their boards actually perform better. Okay, so you know, that's kind of the mathematical side of it, and that appealed to a lot of the bankers around the table. Exactly. But you know, I think there was I think Warren Buffett said something like, you know, it is very easy. You know, we're not doing ourselves any favors because we're only working with half of the population in terms of actually accessing the skills of half the population by only hiring men. So the truth is that you know, there isn't enough. You know, the value in diversity is not always you know, in numbers, but it ultimately does come through in the numbers in terms of actually performance of how the company does.
Yeah, I think it.
So we tried to use that approach.
Yeah, and that's what we've seen. We've seen it really clearly. The diversity is definitely creates an impact on the bottom line in every single way. But going quickly on to the next part of your sort of help over that COVID period was the relief fund. And so what were the takeaways that you took from that over that period?
Yeah, so I mean, in 2020, I was appointed as the head of healthcare and hospitality, so the healthcare and hospitality sector at R&B. So we had a team of people who was responsible, as I was in my previous role, for looking after the relationships of all of the clients in that sector. Previously, we weren't very sectorized, and then we had to change the strategy at the end of 2019, and I took over that sector for the bank. And it just happened to dovetail quite succinctly with the COVID pandemic, and besides the fact that I had obviously a lot of clients in the healthcare space, which was important, I also had quite a lot of experience in terms of thinking about creating value beyond just our banking solutions. So at the time, and very quickly, at the end of March, we formed a steerco and we created a fund of 100 million rand, funded by First Rand. It was a First Rand fund, and we called it Spira, which was the South African Pandemic Intervention and Relief Fund, or Relief Effort, I think it is. That's how we got to Spira. And it was really a group of executives at a First Rand level, so including our CEOs, across the group, and our chief risk officer, who was instrumental in actually making the initiative work. And we got together and we said, okay, right, this is a crisis. How are we going to help? And we started off first week of lockdown. I think we met almost every day, and we decided exactly what our mandate was going to be. And we said, okay, we've got a limited amount of funding, but we can actually make quite a large impact with this funding. It wasn't only about the money. So it wasn't only about just deploying money into certain areas of need, but it was also saying, okay, we also have a workforce who's now sitting at home, who's highly skilled. How can we actually tap into that network of resources of human capital? And how can we tap into our network of corporate clients to help the country cope with the pandemic? So it was a really great example because of how public and private sector can collaborate together. What happened is we worked extensively with the government health departments to try and see where they needed help. We helped by doing a turnkey solution for a new ICU ward at Charlotte Macheki Hospital in Joburg, and others. We helped, we inserted people and a whole bunch of resources into the Business for South Africa work stream. We also worked very closely with the Solidarity Fund in terms of helping them with certain initiatives that they were busy with. And we were very nimble because we were quite small. We weren't like the Solidarity Fund who had to go through a bunch of process and a lot of bureaucracy in order to get things done. We could do things quite nimbly, so they were quite happy to work with us as well. And actually, one thing that was really exciting that I worked on as well, I mean, I was involved in most of the projects that we did. I was pretty much working on it, not even 24/7, I don't know, 36/7. I didn't sleep through COVID. While everyone else was baking a banana bread and watching Netflix, I was hard
saving the world. Yeah.
But we did. We actually got involved in a very nice project called Ubuntu Beds, together with an NGO based in Cape Town, where we actually looked to provide accommodation for healthcare workers who wanted to work or stay closer to the hospitals and not go. At the time, you go recontextualize it and go back to their families, potentially carrying COVID from the hospital. So we created a solution for them to stay in a now closed hospitality sector, in beds that they could feel safe in. And so we tapped into a network of B&Bs and hotels that offered rooms up for this, and we kept the hospitality sector going, and we also helped keep the healthcare workers feeling more comfortable and safe in terms of where they were staying. So that was a really nice initiative as well.
Congratulations. I suppose one last question, and it's one of the things that often I think about is I love South Africa. And I think the president had his investors conference earlier this week, attracting investment. And I think we're in a dire situation with things like crime and things like electricity. We've certainly got our challenges. And then I look at some of the work that you've done and are doing, and some of these great organizations in South Africa, like Mediclinic, who's sort of gone on to be one of the top 3, health providers internationally. And I'm looking at people like Discovery, and I can't help but think, do we have lots more organizations that have global aspirations that, what's your sense? Is there a lot of untapped potential here that we're not seeing?
Well, I mean, just generally, I think there are really amazing stories that come out of South Africa, whether it's small tech through to the large companies that you just mentioned. So I think we shouldn't berate ourselves for being a sort of small country at the tip of Africa that isn't relevant in the global sphere. So I think there are a lot of large success stories, also a lot of small success stories as well. I mean, I think what we haven't actually touched on is how global Virgin Active is as well. So just to give you a sense, we are obviously part of a global group, although South Africa constitutes by far the majority, around 70% of the contribution to the total group. But we have a very large operation in Italy, a large operation in the UK, and then a number of clubs around the Asia Pacific area. And I think that, if you say that we've developed product in South Africa or a model that works in South Africa from a Virgin Active perspective that can be transported, I think that's absolutely the vision of the global business and under Dean Kowalski, where he's looking to make it a much more global, cohesive business. It hasn't been to date. It's been very much operated in silos. but just through the collaboration that I personally had with the other territories and how, we can learn from each other and create best practice, I do believe, Virgin Active can become a global wellness brand, which I don't think really exists extensively throughout the world as we do. I mean, looking at really providing a comprehensive wellness solution, and we can hopefully provide it globally in terms of best-in-class offerings.
Yeah,
and that's definitely a long-term vision.
Yeah, and do you see that happening sort of the next 3 years, new destinations opening up within South Africa, or more from a global perspective, more partnerships and acquisitions happening there?
So look, we're very dominant in the South African landscape. So we are well covered. We're constantly reviewing our estate to see if we need to shift a club or maybe even open a club in an area that's not well covered. But I think we're pretty much saturated in terms of the South African market. At the moment, our focus from an expansion or growth or improvement perspective from a Virgin Active South Africa perspective is really to invest in our existing estate. And there's a lot of work to do there. The company has been relatively starved of capital for many, many years. So we have a lot of investment to make into our clubs, improve the offering, tweak the offering as well, as I mentioned earlier, in terms of the focus on F&B, the investment in the app. You touched on it earlier as well, investing in power backup solutions, unfortunately, but that's a necessity. So we're doing a lot of investment into our existing estate, which I think it's much needed, but a fantastic opportunity to enhance our offering to our members in terms of new equipment or a fresh new look in the club. So we're also looking at rolling out paddle courts, which is also a very big growth area in terms of sport and wellness. So that's good.
And you talk about the youth as well. I've got a 16-year-old, I've got a 23-year-old, a 19-year-old, and a 16-year-old, and they all love the gym. It's weird, but they all love the gym, and I think COVID helped that in a way. And so, what are you seeing trends there? What are you seeing trends with the younger?
Well, they're definitely coming back to the gym in droves, and they love to come there. It's a great thing to see, because if they want to choose to where they want to socialize after school or university, it's at the gym, and it's really good from a lifestyle and health perspective. I mean, as a parent, I'd much rather my kids went to the gym than they sat on their screen at home or did something else like that. So it's a great move for the nation generally to have a healthier cohort of youth. So we're very supportive of them.
Jessica, we're very grateful for your time. We thank you very much. We're looking at your progress and Virgin Active, and they're very lucky to have you, obviously. So we wish you all the best luck. If we get people who want to do business with you, I'd imagine we can just forward an email to you.
Absolutely. People find me, it's amazing. Most anyone who wants to complain is pretty good at finding me as well. but it's not difficult to find me. I'm on LinkedIn and all of the other areas as well. So very happy to chat about ideas.
I linked in with you as well. So it was great speaking to you. Thanks so much, and good luck for the rest of the year.
Thanks, Ralph. Great chatting to you. Really enjoyed our conversation. Thanks.